What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I wanted to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, talk about other factors out there, which you should be watching for as you approach tomorrow. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total. Not to mention 8.1% APY in uninvested cash. The offer now ends on March 31st. It's been extended for a couple of months, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So as far as SPY has been going, we were talking about how there was this left shoulder headed in the right shoulder. We already saw this right shoulder pan out quite nicely. It's got this big dump. So the question is, will we see the market get another big rejection, start dumping even lower, or is the market ready to start reversing from this point on? So I'll give you guys more insights about that. This is going to be dependent on some data that comes out for tomorrow and also on Wednesday. So I'll be talking about what that data is first, and I'll break down the charts. So for the market, okay, the majority of sectors were more green. We saw consumer services in the green, the finance sector, health technology, and the list goes on was more green. But there were some tech stocks from Nvidia to Apple and Google that were a little bit more in the red. So that's how the market looked, a little bit more mixed, but with more green than red, if anything. And it was very interesting to see. We started off on a weaker end. The market gapped down quite a bit, but as time went on, we saw buyers return to defend some stocks such as Tesla. Now, on top of this, I want to mention that as far as earnings goes, just know that there's not really much coming out for tomorrow, but then after market close, we have a couple names. And then for Wednesday, we have JP Morgan Chase, Citi, BlackRock, Wells Fargo, and Goldman Sachs all announcing their earnings. On Thursday, we're going to be having TSMC, United Health Group, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley. So lots of big bank earnings on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday is going to be the biggest of them all. So get ready for volatility by then. Now, for tomorrow, however, I just want to say that we have the PPI data report coming out. This is very similar to CPI, except from the producer side, the wholesale inflation. It'll give us more insights on how inflation is looking for wholesalers, and this is going to have a big effect on the way the market ends up moving. I think that it's very possible that Wednesday is going to be a make or break for the markets. Tuesday is going to be another big day, but Wednesday is going to be the bigger day. Because Wednesday is when we have CPI data coming out, by the way. But then before that, we have PPI for tomorrow. So let's talk about these numbers. We're expecting PPI month over month tomorrow to be at about 0.3% for all items. And once again, this comes out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, an hour before the market opens. That's why I gave you guys a warning about this in my previous video. So we're expecting 0.3% for the month over month basis. For core, we're expecting 0.2 to 0.3%. We're expecting the numbers to be very similar to before on the month over month basis. But when it comes to the year over year data for core PPI, we're expecting 3.7 to 3.5%, a little bit above expectations, a little bit above what we saw from beforehand, at least compared to the previous piece of data. And then on a year over year basis, we're expecting PPI for all items to be around 3.3 to 3.4%. That's above what we previously saw. So we're expecting increases in the year over year data. But for month over month, we're expecting the numbers to be very similar to before, if not lower. So we'll see what this leads to, at least for the broader markets. I want to mention that when it comes to our data, okay, we have gas prices that have been on a bit of a downtrend. We did see gas on average come down just by about 4 cents per gallon in the US. So gas did go down just a tiny bit, not really that crazy. But when it comes to crude relative to crude futures and CPI, you guys could see that we saw the numbers essentially the same. We're looking at crude. And then if we go to the month of December, November compared to December are about the same, which shows us that, if anything, this could imply the data is going to likely be very flat. So that implies the data is the same, not really changing too much. So just keep that in mind. And then the fear and greed index is currently at fear. We're near extreme fear. Typically, when we hit extremes, we tend to see the market bottom. And then our momentum indicators are at extreme fear right now. We're very close to our 125 daily moving average on the S&P 500. Typically, we do bounce near that, so that's a good sign. The put to call option ratio is also at extreme fear, as we're seeing a lot of put buying right now. Could this be a sign that they're about to squeeze shorts? We'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case. The VIX is also neutral, stuck in the middle. It pumped a bit, but then we're going to be watching to see if it rejects to fill some gaps. So what do I think about the share prices? What do I think is going to go on right now? In all honesty, guys, it depends on the PPI data. So just to be very frank, Year over year is going to be very important. If PPI is above what we're expecting, if it's above like 3.5%, for example, that's going to be bearish for the markets. If it's aligned with expectations or below, that could be more positive. Same thing with the rest of these, such as core PPI and beyond. So 3.7% or above is more bearish for core PPI year over year. And if we end up getting the data at 3.5% or below, that's going to be a little bit better. So let's hope we get decent data. So if we get hot numbers, if the data is above expectations, that's going to cause a rug pull. If the data is okay, it's going to cause a bounce. For now, at least from a technical standpoint, and although technicals are not everything, I just want to say that they're looking quite good. Technicals suggest that SPY is going to try to push for 585. If that breaks, we're looking for this imbalance fill for 588. So keep those levels in mind. Despite the head and shoulders, there's potential for this to try to bounce. If we get bad numbers and SPY loses 580, we're looking for a move back down towards 578 or below. So keep that in mind. So lose 580, we turn back down and break past 583. If we hold above that, we're looking for 585 and then eventually 589 above that, which is where this imbalance happens to be. So in my opinion, I think the chart technically is favoring upside. It looks like it wants to hit 585, if not 589. I see some upside potential in SPY, but I cannot promise anything until we see the data. So for now, although it looks like the market wants to bounce a bit, this depends on PPI and CPI. I favor upside a bit more looking at the setup, so I think we could be looking for 585 to 589, but we'll see just to be safe. On ES, we're retesting 5,900. If we break that, we're looking for attempts to get back up to 5,925. If we don't break this and we reject, we're looking for a move back down to 58.80. If that fails us, we dump back down. For now, the share price looks a little bit more bullish, at least at the time of recording this, despite the head and shoulders. We're looking like we're trying to rebound because we already broke this low right here. And we could be forming a divergence, which may lead us into the 5,925 plus area. So this does favor upside a little bit more, but we'll see if we get a rejection or not. So please keep this in mind. For others out there, we happen to have Nvidia coming up to fill this gap. If Nvidia gets good PPI or CPI numbers for Wednesday, but we're going to focus just on PPI. If the numbers are decent tomorrow, we're looking for attempts to get back up to not only 136, but 138 near our 220/50 EMAs. If we get a big rejection, we end up losing 134. We're looking for, a dip back down towards 132. But in my opinion, I think this is looking a little bit more bullish, and we're looking for a move back up towards 138. So it favors upside a little bit more. For Bitcoin, we look a little bit more bullish. We have a nice double bottom-like pattern. We need to see this break past 94,870. If that breaks, we're looking for the 96,000 area. I am concerned about this head and shoulders that still exists on Bitcoin. And if we end up losing 90,000 after all this data comes out, we're looking for a dump. As of right now, we're favoring 96,000 plus on Bitcoin, so it looks a bit more bullish despite that. So keep that in mind. Tesla's looking more bullish. We need to hold above 406. As long as that holds, we're looking for attempts to get back up to 420. And if we break 420, I'm looking for this high up here to be retested at 426. So I see upside potential for Tesla. It looks a little bit more bullish as we've been on a slight downtrend, but what's very good about Tesla is we're trying to reclaim this the support right over here. So we had this trend line of support. We rejected off of this. We retested this, rejected, and then we got bought back up again. So it actually is trying to reclaim support. That's a good sign. So this makes me think that Tesla may attempt a rebound very, very soon. And we could be looking for an attempt to get back up to 420, if not 426. This depends on the data. So if we get bad data and we lose 398, we turn back down. As long as we're above 406, we're looking for an attempt for 420 to 426. Overall, it depends on the news and such, but right now I do think the chart favors upside. NQ is now trying to bounce in the after hours. If we break past 21,109, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 21,200. If we reject here, we're looking for this gap down here around the 20,900 area or below. I think this favors 21,100 plus, and this could be breaking out for 21,200. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. For the QQQ, we're on a bit of a downtrend. If we end up dipping right down here, we're looking for a move back down towards 505. If that fails us, we're going to be dipping back down towards 502. If we end up bouncing, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 511. If that breaks, I'm looking for essentially 515. So I think that the QQQ is favoring 511 to 512 right over here for a push. If we break that, we're looking for a bigger pump. Now, it is possible we push and then reject, or we could just break through this. I think this is going to push a little bit more, but then we'll see what kind of reaction we get once this data is released. But for now, we look a bit more bullish. For Apple, we look a little bit better because we have a gap to fill up here towards 237, a little bit under that. If we break that, we're looking for 239. If we end up losing support at 234, we're looking for a dip to about 230, but I favor this could be pushing for essentially 237 or above. So watch to see if we get that push for these higher levels. I think there's a good chance we try to do that, so watch for a little bit more upside potential. With that being said, I'm going to talk about the rest of these tickers and try to be a little bit more concise. But just know what's going to be very important for this market is what kind of data we get tomorrow and also on Wednesday. So keep that in mind. So as far as Netflix goes, just hypothetically, okay, if we end up losing support at 833, I think this is going to be dumping lower. If we manage to break above 850, we're looking for a bounce. My gut is telling me we're going to be testing 850 at the very least, and we'll have to see if we reject or not. So I'll be watching that at least very, very closely. So just hypothetically, if we end up testing this level, I think we push for this 850 area. If we reject here, we come back down. If we break this, we're looking for a move back up to about 859. So keep those levels in mind. For MSTR, we're going to be testing 337. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially 345. And then if that breaks, we're looking for 350. If we lose support at 328, we could be tipping all the way back down towards 320. In my opinion, I think that this is looking a little bit more bullish looking at the PPO. So it could happen as we see a move like this where it tries to push back up to this imbalance, back up to about 350. So this looks a little bit more bullish to me, especially because we're making a higher low right here, right? We had a low here, we came up, made a higher low. This also resembles kind of like a left shoulder, head, and then a right shoulder for an inverse head and shoulders, which could eventually lead to a bigger move up. We'll see if that ends up being the case, but for now, look for a move to about 337 and eventually the 340s, all the way back up to this imbalance to 350 if we end up breaking resistance. So I see upside potential. This depends on some factors, so just keep that in mind. For Celsius, it looks like it wants to revisit 27.7 to about 27.8. I see potential for upside. If we end up losing 26 or 27 flat, I'm going to be looking for essentially 26.2, but I think this is favoring 27.7 at the very least. For Supermicro, we're doing a good job so far. We're on a bit of a downtrend. We have to bounce here. As long as we try to get back above 30 and hold it, we're looking for a bounce for essentially 32.5 to 32.97. If we break this range, we're looking for a pump much higher. If we reject it, we come back down. Because we have a double bottom here, or maybe like a triple bottom, right? It's looking kind of interesting. For like the more short term, this could be favoring a push back up to these EMAs to the 32s. I think we might push a little bit higher, but then we'll see if PPI causes a rejection or not. But for now, it does favor upside a little bit more. For Palantir, now we dumped quite a bit. We were talking about how this was going to dip a little bit more in my video yesterday. That happened so far. We want to see it reclaim 66.43. If we hold that, we're looking for 68.93 as our target. If we reject, we want to see it lose essentially 64 to turn back down, but I don't really favor that. I think we're going to try to fill this gap up here to try to fill this gap to like the 67 area. If we could hold above our 200 EMA right here, and then we get a bounce like this, that's going to be a very, very good sign. The EMA is going to be extended like this once time progresses. We'll see if we get a bounce like that. I do see potential for it to push a little bit more to at least 67. For Rivian, if we lose 13, we're looking for a dump back down to about 12.5. As long as we hold that, we're looking for a bounce for about 14.17. I favor the bounce, especially as we're holding support here. Could be looking for a move just like this to get back up towards this resistance, and Tesla may have a big effect on this right over here. So I favor that it's going to be pushing to the 14s very soon, and we'll see if we reject or not, but there is most likely potential in this chart. If we break past 14.23, at least on SoFi, I do see a lot more upside potential as well in this. So I think this could be pushing for essentially 14.23, eventually 14.4 as our potential targets. So look for a move just like this where we could dip and start pushing for the mid 14s. If we break that, we're looking for a bigger pump towards 15 plus. So give this some time. I also want to mention that there's technically a downtrend right over here. So you could actually draw out like a little channel that's starting to develop. So if you take an extended line just like this, for instance, and you draw it out just like that, this is going to be our resistance to watch for, and we'll have to be watching to see if we could hold support simultaneously. But overall, I think we're doing a good job at least at holding up. So this kind of looks like a falling wedge. We won't be pushing back up to this resistance if we manage to break past 14.4. But I think that there might be an attempt to bounce here before this trend continues. So just keep that in mind. For the Russell, just know that we are technically on a downtrend, making lower highs and lower lows. But if we break past 219, we're looking for a move to about 222. So watch those levels just to be safe. If we reject, we end up losing essentially 217. We're looking for a dump to about 215. So watch these levels very, very closely. I could be looking for an attempt to get back up to 219.4 on the Russell 2000. And if we break that, I think 222 is coming. I see upside potential in this chart, but this depends on PPI, of course. For AMD, we look a bit more bullish, looking for a test of 120 and 122.8. I see potential for us to try to push higher, especially as we have a gap to fill now. So although we were looking a little bit weaker yesterday, we did see buyers defend it, just like Nvidia, and we actually held this support right here. So we held above 16.7. That's a 116.7, excuse me. That's a good sign for us to push for essentially 120.23 or higher. On ARM, we're in the middle. We could be retesting 139.4. If we break that, we're looking for the 140s. If we reject, end up losing 134 as our support, we're jumping back down towards the 130. So I favor a bounce for 134. For coin, we look a bit more bullish. We have a gap to fill up here towards 257.3. This could be favoring a move even higher, back up towards 265. So as of right now, we're technically on a downtrend, but this might try to bounce to try to continue to fill this gap to 257, then eventually test the 260s if we break our 20 EMA. For Amazon, we're on a bit of a downtrend, but we want to see if we can break past 220. If we break that, we're looking for a push for 222. If it rejects, you're looking for a move back down to 218. I'm favoring a push for essentially 220, so it looks a little bit more bullish. For Meta, we're range bound, going back and forth and back and forth. We have a nice double bottom like structure. As long as we don't do 608, we're favoring a push back up for 615, then eventually the 620 area. So I favor 615 and 620 as the most likely possibilities. And Meta is doing a good job at holding up so far. So I favor upside for that target at 615. I think we're doing quite well so far. Microsoft, we want to see it hold support. So if we could try to hold above 417, I'm looking for an attempt to get back up to about 421. If that breaks, we're looking for this imbalance at 425. I think we favor at least 421 to be tested. We'll see if we reject off that or not. So watch for a move like this for us to try to push maybe tomorrow morning. And we'll see if PPI causes a rejection like this or if we break out. But look for a little bit more upside for 421 at the very least. On Google, we have a very similar setup. So Google has resistance at our key EMAs. I think we might be retesting 193. If we break that, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 195. If this rejects, we could be dipping back down to 191, but I favor upside a little bit more. So let's see how things end up going. For now, we do have that potential. And if we see buyers continue to step in, that's going to help things a lot more. GameStop's on a bit of a downtrend. It's been making lower highs right over here. If we can't hold above 31.6, we could be dipping lower towards 30, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For AMC, we're on a bit of a downtrend as well. This could be testing closer to the 3.4s before it tries to bounce. It has been dumping quite a bit, but we're approaching this support way back here. This is previous resistance becoming support around 3.4. So we could be looking for 3.4 to 3.5 to be where it bases before a rebound attempt at 3.75. I think it may try to rebound later, so keep that in mind. DJT is looking a bit more bullish. As long as we don't end up losing the 40 area, we favor that nice little bounce. We're doing a good job at holding up. We were talking about that yesterday. And for now, it does look like it's trying to push for 44s. So bullish looking setup. It's holding up quite well. Let's hope that this continues. And overall, it's doing a good job. We might slow down a bit and start pushing for 45 plus. And overall, it's looking quite promising. On the VIX, there's a bit of a downtrend right over here. As you guys can see, it's been dumping. We're looking for 18.72 to be retested. We'll see if we bounce off this or not. So this is how it's going to be impacted by CPI. If CPI is hot, we're going to be looking for a bounce like this, causing the market to dip. The market dipping is what's going to cause this, of course. But if we get a decent CPI in this dumps, we have this gap here to fill another gap way down here. We might be coming down to fill some of these gaps to get us back down to the 17s, if not the 16.9 area. And we'll see if it bounces from there. So we'll be watching that very, very big test tomorrow. Does the VIX get a rug pull or not? If bonds start getting bought back up, we're going to be looking for yields to reject. As of right now, they're going up because of inflationary fears. If we get a decent CPI, okay, or PPI as well, both of them are decent, this could start coming down a bit, which is bullish for the markets. If the inflationary data is hot, this will start pumping even more. It's going to be bearish. So we'll see if we get a rejection on this to start slowing things down. That could also help with the market pump more if that ends up being the case. If the dollar loses 109.4 and 109 flat, we're looking for a dump. If it bounces up here, it could be bouncing. This depends on some factors, so we'll see if we get that bounce or not. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening, so please have a good rest of your day. As far as the market goes, I'm anticipating some upside that could be coming, and we could be looking for a move to about 585 or higher. So watch that very closely. I think we might try to bounce on the broader markets looking at the overall setups, but whether or not it happens depends on our key data. So we'll see what happens with the data coming out, with PPI coming out. I hope that we get a good PPI and a good CPI to cause some nice price action. So let's hope for the best. Let's hope we get some good numbers. And I think that could really help things, at least for the more medium term. So we'll see how things end up going. Expects a little bit more upside is the most likely possibility looking at the trends, but whether or not we truly continue that upside. So we might see some temporary upside, and then whether it becomes more sustainable depends on the data. The market could go up a little bit, then go even higher if we get good data, or if we get a big rejection that's going to be because of bad data. I'm hoping we get good data. I hope that it's decent. I hope the market continues to bounce. I anticipate we're going to try to push tomorrow morning. Then we'll see if we get a rug pull or not. So get ready for this PPI report. The data that's come out involving crude, it suggests we're going to have a flat CPI/PPI, but I can't make promises. That's what it suggests. So we'll see how it ends up going. That being said, have a good rest of your day, guys. Thank you all so much for listening, and peace out.